I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Abington Public School Committee. Tonight is February 3rd. This meeting is in lieu of our meeting that would have been January 27th, 2015. And we're going to rise and salute the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I am going to note that we are having a public hearing tonight regarding school choice, and that hearing is scheduled for 7:15. So we may go a little bit out of order here if no one has any objections to that. I'd like to start off by introducing our newest school committee member, Leslie O'Neill, who's filling the vacancy that we have on our board. Leslie's the parent of 3 Beaverbrook Elementary children. She's very active in the schools. She serves on the PTO, helps out in various art programs, and with other programs within the schools. We welcome her to our committee, and we thank Leslie as well as the 2 other residents who also had volunteered to fill the vacancy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome, Liz.
Thank you.
We start off our meetings reading the mission statement. The mission of the Abington Public Schools is to provide all students with relevant, challenging educational experiences to prepare them to be engaged, responsible citizens, and members of the global community. So I'm going to go a little bit here. And I guess in lieu of us rescheduling and talking about weather, I'm going to ask if Superintendent Schaefer can speak a little bit about snow and...
So, not on the agenda, but certainly very timely is the topic of snow, and you know, the concerns that we all have, especially with our students and their safety. And last week we sent out a message asking parents to please be aware of their children's route to school every day during the school year, but especially during these times with changing conditions, especially with sidewalks and narrow roads. And seems like students potentially wearing, headphones, even though we ask them not to, they do. They can't necessarily hear or see the traffic coming with these high drifts, so we ask people to be careful. And even after the sidewalks have been treated and plowed, there are times that they get covered, again, by someone clearing their driveway. It creates an impasse that forces the students out into the streets. So if we could wait until the sidewalks were cleared for us to be able to have school, that would absolutely be a good thing to do, but we just aren't able to do that because of the amount of snow, the duration of the time period that we would be going without school. So we really need parents to please be aware of how their children are getting to school. Even if they take the bus, is the route from your house to the bus stop safe? If they're walking to school especially, is the route from your house to the school safe? Because the DPW did absolutely the best that they could with the conditions and the equipment and the people they have. I want to thank them. Now, out in Abington, there are people right now, I'm sure, that aren't necessarily pleased with the conditions that they have with the narrow streets. But I do know, in talking to the DPW every day over the last couple of days, how hard they worked to try to get the town clear and safe. So just wanted to highlight that at this meeting because, unfortunately, it's probably not the last winter event that we have before it gets warmer. Unfortunately, I think there's another couple on the horizon. So you just want people to really pay attention to the way they're traveling through Abington. Even if you don't have children coming to the schools, please know that there are people on narrow streets, and please take great care.
Thank you. So I'm going to jump around a little bit here, and we maybe have Kathy's ready to present on the North River.
Okay.
It's a big jump.
It's a big jump. I'll give everybody a minute to find their information on North River Collaborative. As everyone knows, Abington is a member of North River Collaborative, and as part of the process, tonight I wanted to present you with some information on the fiscal 2016 budget for North River Collaborative, which is anticipated to have, or will have, an increase of 1.8% over the current budget. The total amount is $14,561,155. If you look through the packet, there are numerous places where you will see information about transportation and technology, purchase of vehicles. But if you go to the back page, it lists all of the revenues that come into North River and the expenditures. You'll also see down there capital purchase of vehicles. North River runs a transportation program for special needs students, which has done a lot to help the budget at North River Collaborative, which helps to keep the fees down for the programs that we're involved in. I don't know if anyone has any other questions. I think most of the information in here is pretty straightforward. In the packet, there's also included the letter certifying the budget from Arthur Sullivan, who is now the treasurer of North River Collaborative and used to be our business director.
Do they have to have a balanced budget? Because they're running a $25,000 deficit this year?
The way the budget at North River operates, it's always in the red when we start the year. And as we go through each month, it catches up because of the way the budget, the way the financial system is set up, because the monies come in over the year. But they have never ended up in the red, and it's not anticipated that it will this year either. It was kind of every month we get an update of the budget, what's been expended to date, and where that deficit stands. And they've always been able to meet it or make adjustments along the way because they don't have another choice.
Well, they could just take it out of reserve, right? If something happens?
Right, but that is not something that we look to do.
It fluctuates because of the tuition.
It fluctuates because of the tuition, and I mean, just like, I mean, it's a special education program. And everyone knows that a special ed is a moving target. So more students will come in to one of their programs for a certain period of time, and then they move back to their own community. So it's definitely a moving target, and the numbers change monthly. Are there any other questions?
And they're subject to audit every year anyways,
Yes.
so.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, it's been a number of years that the audits have been so perfect that there haven't been any comments of anything that they should look at. So this year, they,
Don't jinx them, Kathy.
I know, but they asked if there was something they should be looking at. No, they do a good job.
They
They
do.
do a good job.
And actually, collaboratives this year, for the first time, will also be going through the coordinated program review. They have not had to do that in the past, so this is the first year they're all prepping. So all of them are going through it at the same time. But they have had to go through the audits in terms of the financial piece.
Do they have to rotate their audit firm? Do they, every 5-7 years, put it out to bid?
I wouldn't know that. Do you know that, Felicia?
know about collaboratives.
Yeah.
I have not heard mention of that, but I've only been on the board for This is my third year.
Yeah. No, because when I just know, you bring a new audit firm in, and I guarantee you'll have
Won't
a
be
bucket
perfect.
list of comments. And then you'll get to year 6 or 7, there'll be nothing. Then you bring in, that's just how the game works.
Pretty good. So there's no motion needed. Thank you, Kathy. So at this point, we're going to be going into our public hearing on school choice.
Seven
7:11, sorry, the clock's. We have a few minutes then.
Okay, to do program studies?
Mike wanted to be here for that.
Okay. I can go if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah, we do the minutes.
We could do the minutes. What time to do the minutes?
Whatever you'd
A few
like.
minutes to do the minutes.
I can drag that out for a couple of minutes.
Yeah. So we're going to go to the reading and approval of records from, we have January 6th. Everybody's had a chance to come over.
Yeah, I just had one thing on page 6, just for clarification on the creation of Reed's Collaborative Capital Reserve Fund. And it says they have a capital reserve fund that school committees must approve to spend. Technically, we're approving them to create that. So I was just proposing new language that says, Mr. Shaver stated that Reed's wants to establish capital reserve fund that, as required by law, is subject to the approval of 2/3 of the member districts. Reed's has, in their request, stated the reason for the reserve fund and limit on the balance held in the reserve fund. Just because the way it reads as if they already have the fund, and that hasn't happened yet. I can submit that if,
Yeah, thank you. Because the vote was to establish it.
Okay, yep, thank you, Paul.
then just one other thing. On, we have on the executive session, we started at 9:18. Do we have what time we adjourned our full meeting? Because we don't say what time we adjourned.
Right, I think what is, you go into executive session at 9:18, and then you adjourn at 9:32, and you don't come back?
Right, but I'm saying on a regular meeting, what time did we adjourn there?
Oh,
Adjourned to go into executive session.
to put it on here, adjourned at 9:18, and then start executive session with,
Yeah, whatever time it's just that I wouldn't want someone to think that like we adjourned at 8:30 and then we go into executive session at 9:18.
So technically, they're actually at the same time, because although we walk into the other
Right.
room,
right,
technically, you adjourn to go into executive session, so if,
right. 'Cause
So it'd be
I
like
think we
9:18.
ended that you, by roll call vote, you go into executive session to discuss the negotiation of non-collective bargaining agreement and not to return to public session.
right, at 9:18.
So I could say at 9:18 in there.
Yeah, it just kind of struck me as we adjourned, but technically you could mill around and take time before you go into executive
Right,
session.
like you could adjourn here at 9:15, and that doesn't start till 9:20.
Right, that's all.
But we're actually in executive session while we're walking to that room.
Oh, okay. All
So
right.
it's 9:18.
At 9:18, okay.
We adjourn to go into executive session.
Okay.
At
I can
9:18.
add that into the minutes, 9:18.
So, because the way that vote's taken, the rules of the open meeting law apply, because you're still in session, but you're in executive session,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, I mean, if it's not confusing to anybody else, then leave it the way it is. But wouldn't want anybody to think that, we adjourn, we don't put in our adjournment time, but we say when we start the other. But technically, Peter's right.
You're in session when you
Right.
walk over.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
So, this is further discussion. We would be looking for a motion to approve the minutes of January 6, 2015, as presented or amended.
Make that motion.
Second.
And then,
And Leslie will abstain.
right.
Yeah.
And then a motion to approve the executive session minutes of January 6, 2015, as presented or amended.
Make that motion.
Second.
Thank you.
So now, we need to be looking for a motion for us to go into the public hearing on school choice.
So moved.
Second.
Can you read that?
So, need to explain?
Yep.
Okay, so, in your packet, at our last meeting, under informational, I provided all of this information that's in your packet tonight, which includes a press release that we use. It includes a letter to parents. It includes the application for enrollment under school choice. In Massachusetts, each year, school committees, if they don't opt out of school choice, they're automatically in school choice. And for the last couple of years in Abington, what's been recommended and what the committee has done is opted for school choice in grade 9. And I can answer any questions people have about the information in the packet. And just a brief rationale with the grade 9 designation. At the elementary levels, we are crowded. And the taking on additional students at the elementary level when you're already crowded, the concern would be that we wouldn't be doing what's in the best interest of our elementary population by adding more students to that mix. So we've limited school choice to the high school level, grade 9 in particular. The feeling being that at the grade 9 level, you're able to get those students coming from other towns, and their families provide the transportation into Abington to provide them the educational services of a good high school experience in Abington for their high school years. So once a student is accepted in grade 9, we own them as if they're a resident in Abington. And we have them take class here in Abington for all 4 years. You can't close your door to those students once they've been accepted. You owe them those educational services for 4 years. They can leave if they choose to leave, but you're committed as a district for those 4 years. Because of our space issues, people have been hesitant to get into choice at the earlier levels, and because we wanted to start slowly with choice, we've limited it to 5 students for grade 9 each year. The concern previously has been if you open it up to 10 or 20 or 30 and they came, and we haven't had an experience with choice, we wanted to ease our way into the choice market. It was a brand new thing in Abington when we started it a couple of years ago. Now, in a couple of years, when the new school building comes online, I think that there'll be additional things to consider with choice. There'll be additional opportunities for Abington with choice. We don't have a plan around that yet, but we're still 3 years away from that building being open, and that gives us the time to consider those different options around choice as that building comes online. People should know, and we've talked about this before, but this perhaps for people at home, every community that builds a school does experience an increase in student population because we'll get students back who are in other placements that will find the new state-of-the-art building a draw in terms of educational service and what we'll be able to provide. So we're willing to answer any questions people have.
I have a couple. So how many students do we currently have right
We
now?
have two.
Okay, and what's the most we've ever had as we've had this program?
Two.
And other schools that have just recently, other districts that have recently built schools such as Rockland or East Bridgewater, have we seen a tremendous increase in school choice in those schools from older
Seen-
schools before they?
They've seen some increases, yes.
So-
But depending on the community and other things, I wouldn't want to give you exact numbers, or I don't know them.
Okay, so you wouldn't know if it's like a single digit or a double digit?
In the surrounding communities, West Bridgewater is the one that does the best with choice. Now, they're a little ahead of us in terms of school construction. Their school was approved a couple of years ago. They've always had good choice numbers. I know that Rockland has seen an increase in choice, but I think those are single digit, maybe a dozen across the entire district.
Rockland last year had 3.95 receiving students, 5.97 sending students. This year, they have 33 receiving students and 15 sending students. And that 33 students is $175,000 to their budget. Whitman-Hanson this year has 17 receiving, 15 sending. East Bridgewater, which had been trending more sending, is now going, they picked up 16 students receiving, and they're sending 27.
I guess the last thing is that I'd just be worried about increasing it too quickly, because we can't consider this as recurring funding currently, because we could have, say, 10 or 15 come in 1 year, and if we lose 5 or 10, and we do a hiring based upon the numbers that we have 1 year, I'd be very concerned about losing students and then not having that fund in there to pay any staff, additional staff that we hire. So I'd be concerned about using that as a recurring funding on a yearly basis.
I mean, in my opinion, in 3-4 years, we have an opportunity in 3-4 years, but for today, I don't know that there's a need or even necessarily the draw at this point to substantially increase it.
And I also believe that if some students may want to come maybe perhaps for athletic reasons. There's certain MIA regulations, I believe, that if you're on a varsity sport and you try to transfer schools, that may not necessarily, MIA may not necessarily allow those students to participate in that sport that they've come to the school.
For that year.
Yeah. That's all I have.
You're gonna need to take them, sorry, yeah.
Hi. I could just add that what I've heard from New Building Experiences is our students currently in private school settings will likely want to return to the high school setting. And we have one of the highest figures of students that go out from K to 12 in our community in Abington. And I would think that that would be our first priority, is making sure we have space and a curriculum and programming for those students when you build a new building that hopefully will stay in the public school setting.
From the high school perspective, do you have a rough idea of how many going to private schools this year, or an average over maybe the last?
On average, we usually, from 8th to 9th, we lose about 60, 30 to Voc and 30 to private, almost always for the entire time I've been here. But I don't know exactly. Several come back over the year or two particularly, but even in the first year, several come back in their span of time.
The other thing that's happening is that some of the privates have opened up middle school programs in grade 7 and grade 8 in recent years. And because we'll have this grade figuration, 5-8 middle school and then the 9-12 high school, I think it lends itself to that environment, because our students will enter as 5th graders, and again, we'll have this state-of-the-art facility, and hopefully they'll want to stay through that middle school experience rather than have it be another exit point out of the system.
And it's not like we've turned anybody down either. I mean,
Right, we didn't, other than the two, we haven't had, and how many years have we been in the program?
2011?
at least 5, I would say, 4 or 5. Yeah, we've had applicants, and and I've interviewed people, and but they don't stick to it and follow through.
What's the plan, though, as far as, Pete, you mentioned about in a couple of years, so how, if we do it at the lower grades, where's the funding gonna come from to, I mean, the capacity is staffing and the building itself.
Space.
The space, so if we have the space, do we have the staffing to meet the needs if we open it up?
That's something we'd want to look very carefully at in the 3 or 4 year period. In 3 years when we open, and then 4 years would give us another year to understand the experience of those kids coming back from those residents who are already here. The other piece to that is that you try to approve those students coming in June, at the end of 1 year, before you open the following year, so that if you did get a surge of people, you'd hopefully be able to put the staffing in. You put the staffing in place over the summer prior to them coming. But there are a couple of interesting breakpoints. If you get 5 students in grade 4 or 3 students in grade 4, that's not necessarily enough to hire another teacher and reduce your class size numbers. You'd want to be very careful about where those entry points would be. Does that make any sense?
Sort of ideal, great that you do it annually, because then we can make those decisions based on where we are.
In other words, if you could get in the perfect world, you'd get 23 people applying for grade 3, you know you're going to hire 1 teacher, and you can do that with the money that you would get. You're right, it doesn't work that way. We'd have to be careful about making sure the funding was in place to add staff if we knew we had the space.
I think the reality is that we never get the calls because we have large class sizes. I mean, people are not contacting us about school choice, which is what happens. They would call, ask, inquire about it. So we still have to look at system-wide the class sizing piece if we really want to embrace school choice. It would
Right,
be,
but right now, we only offer school choice at the high school, not at the lower levels.
right, but we get phone calls. I mean, anybody called curiosity-wise about,
Right,
but
but,
surrounding districts do it as well.
but do we have the staffing at the high school level to expand it beyond the 9th grade? I mean, because I think we've already stated that we, just physical capacity at the lower grade, the middle school and the elementary level, you can't take anybody on.
Right.
But do we have it at the staffing at the high school level to add a sophomore? I mean, we've got 96 kids in the sophomore class this year. I mean, that's 25 kids less than the average at the Abington High School. So we have seats, but are we saying that we have the instruction, the teachers to put in front of the kids if this takes
I
off?
think you can always take 5 students at the high school level up. My concern is, do we have the support services for the 5 students? The phone calls that I get are the December, January crisis, family in crisis, student who is falling apart somewhere, struggling somewhere, looking to make a switch and get away from this group of friends, you know, situations like that. We have taken on a couple of reciprocal arrangements with other communities that we make, you know, deals with other principals, given a student's emotional state, maybe something's going on. But to open it up, other than a freshman student who is saying, I'm going to commit to this school like I'm going to commit to Xaverian, you know, when I leave 8th grade. And orientation, you know, so those transition pieces happen for that student, just like the 8th grader coming in, they're peers, they're peer leaders, they get connected. My concern is to open it up at any level. It would be the student in crisis or the family in crisis or the I'm here temporarily and then I'm moving out and we're providing services, all kinds of services, you don't know what they come with, that once they become your student as a district, you own the breadth of services.
And don't we have the confidence that we can address those needs of students here in Abington?
I do not. I think that's
The breadth of.
we're a district without, at least a school without social workers, adjustment counselors. We're on, you know, thin strings for services support.
The hope was to add 5, and then the next year add 5 more, so those 5 become sophomores, and then you're at 10, 15, 20, and see how that went. because you'd add 5 to each class as they move through and they'd stay. In the perfect world, that was the original plan 5, 6 years ago, to add those 20 across the high school population, with ninth grade being the entry point.
And we've got, I mean, principals doing home checks, home visits, assistant principals in the court once or twice a week, out of, so, I mean, we're just, those kinds of things were spread all over the place, and that would be my fear. Chemistry, put them in chemistry classes, I think we definitely could do.
I guess one of the things I have, though, is a bigger issue on the school choice is we have 31, and this is something I would ask from Peter and whoever else. We have 31 students going out of the district this year. Why is that? Why do we have children leaving a district, choicing out of Abington? I mean, and that number spiked this year. I mean, according to what the state had, I mean, we've been averaging 2, the last 3 years, 6, 5, almost 10, and then this year was 31. And I'm not asking for an answer tonight, but all of a sudden we saw this spike, and I just wish we could get an explanation on that, because that's not a positive trend. And, we continue to just receive 2.
I believe at least 5 or 6 of them are people that are opting for full-day kindergarten in Rockland, because they have the space and it's free.
A lot of our area towns have brand-new buildings, and they decided to be school choice, and, I mean, I'm sure that's attractive.
And I'm not saying, these may not be at the high school.
Yeah, I
mean,
don't know,
These can be across the board, but just, if we could kind of get some context to what, because it went from 9.7 last year to 31 this year, and that seems like a significant jump. And if it's, I'd be curious too, if it's families going over to Rockland for kindergarten, do they then come back to Abington?
This is their first year doing it, and it's only 5 or 6 of them.
Because they can do that, right? You could skip out for 1 year to get,
And come back.
and then come back.
But that's only 5 or 6 of that total number.
Okay, right.
That are over for the kindergarten program, and I don't know how many of those will come back. I'd like them all to come back.
And then,
I'd like to offer full-day kindergarten.
and then related to that 31 is just what the financial impact to us, to the district is. And then if we could just work on some sort of a policy around school choice, just to have something, I don't know what we're doing tonight, but just to work on a policy, how we address this, because if we've had it in place for a number of, 4 or 5 years, we don't have anything addressing this. And out of the surrounding towns, and we are one of the few communities that only offers it to ninth graders. So is the thinking then, even with the new building, we will still limit it to just ninth graders?
Well, it's, as you know, it's the school committee's designation in terms of.
Right, but obviously it would come based on a recommendation.
I'm anticipating, go ahead.
I wouldn't recommend a 10th, 11th, or 12th grader.
Okay.
I wouldn't, I don't think a new building is going to bring us any more resources
Okay,
that would support that.
so it's consistent with our approach now. It's, the building doesn't mean anything.
No,
You don't
younger
have the
grades,
service.
would they, right, I mean, it would,
I think we should also talk about the comparison of electives, comparison of.
well, I think, I don't know why people are choosing to other schools. I would say maybe it's the same as a private school situation. They're feeling that they have a better programming in other schools. Maybe it's a class size thing in elementary levels. Class size is not the issue at the high school. Programming certainly is, absolutely. You'll see in the program of studies in a little bit, and that's very public and all over the website. Our program of studies is there. Are they getting, computer technology classes in other districts? Are they, is there other programming that they're finding in other districts besides, that it's a new building and those kinds of things? I'm not sure.
My own, as of, 2015, 3 years from a new building, as of today, it would be, let's see what the experience is of those students returning to Abington after we open our doors, and then the following year, let's think about pre-K through 9, or K through 9 choice. But I don't know what those levels would be until after we understand what the experience of people coming back to the district after we open the doors. That's as of 3 years before we open the doors, that would be my opinion as of tonight.
I also don't think we know at this point what our budget situation is going to be at this time. We've got the money to build our new building, but we still annually have to look at our budget to fund materials, to fund personnel, and we don't know what that situation's gonna look like 3 years down the road. So I think it's something that we have to, there are a lot of different components that figure into how you use school choice.
Well, I'll look to Felicia on that, but I would like to think we do know what our budget situation is going to be 3 years down the road, because I don't want to be sitting on the school committee and saying, well, we got a new school, we don't know what the budget situation's in, because people entrusted us with the money to build a new school, knowing that you know how to manage it and effectively, so when it opens, you'll still have the resources and the teachers in front of the students. So, I don't want to sit here and say that we don't know what it's going to look like in 3 years, because we better know what it looks like in 3 years.
Well, every year we wait to see how much money the state's going to give us. Every year we work with the town to see how much the town's going to give us. We don't know this year how much money we're going to have for next year.
Right, but
It's
we
part
have
of the bu- it's
we
part of
have a
the budget
decent
process.
idea. I was just the idea of like saying we don't know what it's going to look in 3 years. We better know what it has a sense for what it's going to look like in 3 years. Because otherwise, what are we doing here? I mean, it's like, I understand there's impacts of state funding and that sort of stuff, but we have to have a plan in place to say, listen, we're going into a new school. The utilities are going to go up by this. We're going to have, facilities. We're going to need additional services here, but we're going to save over here for this, that, and the other thing. And I would like to think that, based on conversations the finance subcommittee's had with Peter and Felicia, that they have a good handle on that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
Well, I definitely think we know how much we need.
Right.
It's the other pieces, I think, is what Kathy's alluding to, that are the unknowns.
I think it's a little harder for a school district or a public entity to present a 5-year plan as opposed to a private company. I think private companies have a little easier method of presenting a 5-year plan or even a 10-year plan. And I think it's a little more defined in the private sector than it is in the public.
oh, absolutely it is, because if all of a sudden the legislature wants to cut, take money, shift it from here to there, we're beholden to them. But I still think I would like to think that when we open that school, we know what it's going to cost us. And if we're going to add school choice, we know what that's going to do. Because if you look at West Bridgewater, they're taking in $1.2 million for school choice. They get almost $5,500 per student that comes in the door, K through 12. I mean, Avon's the same way. I mean, they're up $800,000. I mean, so some of these towns are doing this as a revenue generator. I would just like to think that if we're going to think about this in a couple of years, we start planning for it now, or we just say, we're just going to do 9th grade. And if that's what we're going to do, then that's the plan. But if we better start planning for it now.
So what the increased dollars does for the system is it improves your program of studies. That's for all kids in the school.
I can actually speak to West Bridgewater as a graduate of West Bridgewater. Student population size in West Bridgewater is half of what it was in terms of residents. So they had the space, and so they were soliciting other, the BRs, the Brocktons, they could give programming that when BR built a new building and they started to cut, staffing, that was a significant move for them. So they had the space that we don't have. And I know that that's been a savior for them, school choice.
Like kindergarten. That's why we don't offer kindergarten right now, because we don't have the space for it.
Avon was in the same situation. They didn't have enough students to actually have their own high school without school choice.
Right, in Holbrook.
So, but Paul, you're right. We know what our numbers are, and we can make projections, and the further out you go, the more concerned you get about your projections and forecasts around the budget, but we have those projections. And I think, Kathy, what you're saying, without putting words in your mouth, is we don't know what Chapter 70 is, and we don't know what local receipts are.
I mean, we know what we need. We know what we need this year. We know what we need 3 years from now. We know what we need when we open that building.
But we don't know what
I
we're gonna
can't
get.
remember the year that we've ever gotten what we needed. So what I'm saying is, 3 years down the road, we don't know that we're going to get what we need. So we can't make that decision. Maybe we can set up a what if, okay? We know we need this much, and if we get this kind of revenue from all these other sources, then we'll be able to do this. I'm not saying we can't project and look down the road. Of course we are. We wouldn't be building that building if we couldn't look down the road and see what the students in this town need, and have worked this hard to put together a building and a curriculum for that building that shows what we need. That doesn't mean that all those other sources are going to give us the amount of money that we need. And as we've always done, when what we've need's been cut, is we've adjusted. We've adjusted as well as we can.
Well, I'd be careful when we say cut, because if we don't have it, it was never cut. So I just don't want to give the impression that it's like, things are being cut. I mean, we aren't getting what we need. That's an absolute. But are things being cut? I don't think things have been cut since 2008. I mean, we may not get what we need, and you're absolutely right on that. We're not getting what we need, because even Peter in his budget presentation, has, this is what we're requesting, but this is our additional needs that they're in the budget, but we're not requesting because we understand the constraints that the revenue stream in the town. But if we're seriously thinking about school choice, expanding it beyond, not at the high school level, but at the elementary and the middle school level, that we start planning for it sooner rather than later, if it's something we really want to do. And as a school committee, do we want to do it?
So after the experience of opening up the additional room, and then perhaps seeing what that brings back to us for residents, I'd want to consider broadening the school choice. But that's 3 years away.
It's 3 years before we even consider, 4 years probably.
Potentially.
Potentially, yeah, okay. I just want to just be realistic about what the expectation is. It's, right now, we're just going to stick with 9th grade, and for the reasons Peter and Terry laid out, and 3 years from now, when the new school comes online, we'll consider expanding the program.
That would be what, as of today, that would be what I want to do. But that's what I feel is a responsible thing to do, because nothing's going to change in terms of classroom spaces over the next 3 years.
Right.
Can I just clarify, it's 5,000 per student maximum, and that's set by the state?
There's an
around there?
equation that provides a percentage of the Chapter 70 value or the 5,000, and we're in an area with a Chapter 70 that we'd end up with the 5,000
Yep, okay, per student.
per student. It's an either or, and we end up with the 5,000 because of the math.
And just to talk about what Paul mentioned about having a policy on this, each year, it's around this time that we vote on it
Yes.
as a committee.
Yep. And we could wait till the end of, we have another meeting in a couple of weeks. That way, we don't need to vote on it tonight. So,
Do we want to put it off, or do we, how many agenda items do we have at the next meeting? I think we have a couple things that have already, the Frollo peer review, people will be coming in.
up to whatever the rule of the committee might be.
Is there more discussion on it?
Just one other thing, just for Peter, for clarification. As far as when school choice, and Terry, we're doing it because of the additional services that students might need that come in, say at 10th or 11th grade. It's not necessarily a discipline issue. It's other services that they might need. So when a student choices to come into Abington, what's the process as far as, like, if you could have the best student in the world, and then you have someone that has some issues, if they choice into Abington, we take them in. Is that how that
Yes.
works?
Blind to disabilities or services.
Okay, all right.
They're treated as if they're living in 02351.
So when you say an application, it's really, it's not an application when you just process it. You have to take that student. If they decide, I want to come here, that's how it works.
They become a resident, other than transportation. They provide their own transportation.
So regardless of what we request, student records, disciplinary records, that's all just part of their file that we have to take in to make.
I meet with everyone,
Right.
and a parent or guardian with their records and discuss anything that shows up on there that I'd be concerned about, to say, this is how we do it here in Abington, these are the expectations, how committed are you? This is a 4-year plan here, we want you to engage in our entire school, our co-curricular activities, to make sure that they're going to buy in and be a member of our school community. But there really isn't a fine line that says, because you had a 3-page discipline report, we can't take you. I mean,
Right, so even if you sat with them and they said, you know something? I'm not buying any of that, but I'm still coming because I applied. You have to take them.
I could discourage them, but yes, I believe I do.
Right, okay,
They're treated like a resident, like they just moved to Abington.
okay.
And if they came with services that are required, or suspected, or whether it be testing, or, that's our responsibility at that point.
It's not on the sending district? There's no, once we accept,
The only thing we don't do is transportation.
right. Okay, so it's a blind draw on our part. We just, once we open ourselves up to K through 12, anybody that wants to come to Abington, as long as they provide the right paperwork, we have to take them.
That's my
Okay,
understanding.
okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion or questions?
I'll make a motion if the committee wants to, accept school choice for 9th grade only for academic year 2016,
Up to 5 students.
up to 5 students.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Can I just ask Peter if you could maybe just look at that, the students that are leaving the district, the 31? Just, your, best assessment on, just for another meeting. Doesn't necessarily have to be, next agenda is pretty full, and we can postpone it to another one.
No, I've got
Can I
it.
ask
Thank you.
Terry one more question? In 2009, we had a big exodus too, right? That was, I think, I'm sorry to keep making you go up and down.
I think the exodus in 2009, was probably due to a budget scenario, or at least a perception of reduced programming. And in fact, then there were a lot of staff cuts also in that time, and I think the exodus was probably more between 8th and 9th grade too. People I feel like once they make that, I have to transition somewhere, where am I going to go? I think you're going to get less transition once people have moved and said, I'm in the high school, I'm probably going to stay here. But it's those, and I think with we talked about it, the new campus piece, the transition's probably going to happen between, 4th and 5th grade, and then I'm here. How many transitions are people going to make from there if they're 5 through 12 campus? Maybe.
So we need to go out of, we need a
Vote to
vote to
go
go
back to
back into, out of
session.
public session into regular session.
Yes.
Yes.
Is there visitors yet?
Do you want to, yeah, you can
Then
ask,
we have to just,
ask for hearing of visitors.
Oh, sorry. I'm really skipping around here.
just want somebody,
Hearing of visitors. And hearing none, we will move on. Thank you. So next we have, under unfinished business, we have the proposed Abington Public School Chapter 222 policy.
So, A lot of work has been done on the Chapter 222 policy. In the packet, you have a version with and a version without changes from the previous version 2 that you saw, so that you can see the edits that were made. Paul and I met with Joe Emerson to review this, so it has been vetted, and again, a lot of work has been done on it, and I want to thank Paul, and I also want to thank the subcommittee, Kathy and Ellen, because, you know, compared to what I've seen in other districts, I think we have policy that's a good one. Certainly want to take any questions people might have, or if anybody else who's worked on this wants to provide any other information. We've talked about it in other meetings, so I wasn't planning on going through much of it because we've already walked through so much of it already.
I have no questions.
Yeah, I just want to thank the school committee, everybody's patience with me on this, to work with me on this, as far as, I know I can be a pain in the neck with certain things, and especially when it comes to policy. But one thing I would like to just kind of say about this is, you know, as far as this is to make sure that, you know, we keep students in school as much as possible, and, you know, they're not being expelled for, you know, unlimited amounts of time. And so it is about the students, but I also, you know, I thought it was important in the policy where we state that every principal and teacher has a right to expect respectful and prepared students in their school and classroom setting. Because it's not always just about the students, it is about the people that are in front of the students and the people that support them every single day in this district, who do a great job. And then one last point, as far as this policy goes, so there's no ambiguity here. The Abington School Committee will not participate in the determination of any student disciplinary consequences. So it's not up to us, it's up to the principals, assistant principals, and the superintendent to handle the discipline and the consequences that come with not following what's expected of their behavior in the district. But so we're the school committee's out of it.
So, I mean, in the, you know, and our philosophy is that these are teachable moments for our students in terms of behavior, even if, I mean, you make a mistake, students make mistakes and do things that require consequences. So they're owed not only the good discipline means the counseling piece where we talk about mistakes and choices, and all students are owed, you know, well-managed and disciplined buildings so they can go to school in a place where they feel safe. So that's the intention here.
And just one last thing, and if anybody gets a chance to read this, if people are watching this, please read this and get a sense for what Peter, Terry, all the principals, teachers, everybody goes through on a daily basis to deal. This is just one policy they have to deal with. There's a lot that they do every single day that people need to really appreciate what they're up against. And I mean, look at how long it took us to get through this. Now they have to deal with it on a daily basis. And they do a great job.
Thank you.
So, we'd be looking for a motion to approve the Abington Public Schools Chapter 222 policy as presented here this evening.
I'll make that
motion.
I'll second it.
Okay.
All in favor? Thank you. Next, we have the Superintendent of Schools 2013-2014 evaluation, and I want to thank everybody that's participated. I am going to provide this at our next meeting. I'll get it to everybody before we meet at the end of the month. And we've done our records. We do not have the folio here tonight. They'll be joining us next time.
Yeah, likely, yes.
Um, So we have Teresa Sullivan to join us again here, from principal of Abington High School. And actually, before you jump in, I just wanted to mention about the distracted driving, and maybe you can,
The distractology bus is here looking for visitors. It's been here since Sunday.
I have the announcement from
Yeah.
Jessica, so it's Abington High School, in partnership with the Abington Police Department, are proud to be hosting the Arbella Insurance Foundation's Distractology 101 program. This program will offer videos, simulations of real-life driving scenarios, teaches new drivers the dangers of driving distractions, including texting behind the wheel. You had a lot of kids sign up.
Yes, kids are signing up. They have appointment cards. They show the appointment card to the teacher and head out two students at a time, simulation in the bus. It's open to the public after 2:30, I believe.
It has heat because they cleaned the roof off of it today so that they could get heat in the van.
Each student who participates receives a $15 gas card. So it's a win-win either way. I guess we want to thank Arbella, the police department, as well as the high school.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be,
After 2:30, get a $15 free gas card too.
just students, just
Gonna be
students.
putting your
Yeah.
disguises on and
Yeah.
going to a few.
Go in a few times.
Mike, you look young.
Yeah. Well,
So we'll be busy rescheduling all of those appointments.
yes.
Oops.
So this is the proposed revisions to the 2015-16 high school program of studies.
Not a lot here, unfortunately, but I will also say that the first page are the addition of visual arts courses, and the timing of how this process works is the school council approved the courses before we had our budget meeting, and I already know that an art teacher is off the table, so there's no need to consider these courses for the program of studies. So the only thing I'm really asking for of the school committee is the second page. So three additions or three changes. One is the addition of a senior seminar course under the Health and Wellness Department. They are currently piloting something with student participation, the seniors, looking to add sort of a real-world application around broad world health issues as well as individual health issues. This would be a senior elective. And the change in the science department, they are looking to eliminate Biology 1, Level 3. And for those students that are struggling in biology in Level 2, they would make it a 2-year sequence, so freshmen, sophomores. Currently, the state allows the biology MCAS to be taken either in the freshman year or the sophomore year. So this gives the students struggling, they can choose to take it at the end of the freshman year, but if they're struggling at that point, because the bio test is actually in June, they could, and we would recommend they take the second year of bio, a lot of review and additional topics, and prepare them for the bio MCAS in the end of their sophomore year when they're taking the ELA and the math MCAS as well. And the last change is currently immigration, ancestry, archaeology, and Holocaust and human behavior, 2 social studies electives, have been unleveled, and we're looking to level them, similar to what we already do in some of the English electives like poetry and public speaking, where we have multi-levels in the same classroom, level 1 and level 2, and the students choose a level at the beginning of the course, and the teacher would then, they would have separate expectations depending on the level that they are enrolled in. A lot of our students, we have a lot of electives that are unleveled, and it's a balance because NEASC wants you to have heterogeneous grouping, and that has helped to say we have unleveled electives. On the other hand, our students want leveled electives for their transcript to count in their GPA and class rank. So we're trying to balance, have some unleveled and some leveled. And these are new electives as of last year. So we did run them as unleveled.
I know my daughter, Olivia, took the immigration ancestry the first year that was piloted, and there was an awful lot of work. She had a great time in it. I'm glad that we're actually going to a leveled sequence here, because the amount of work that she did was a lot, and she got a lot out of it too, so.
And I think that there is a sense from students that an unleveled course will be easier and less homework, and really, again, that balance between, it's more of to keep it open to all level, make it heterogeneously grouped, not necessarily to say, and there aren't any standards here of behavior or product and academics, but we're trying to balance the NEASC drive to have all heterogeneous grouping, but to be a typical high school that expects transcripts to have, levels and groupings.
So the classes that are unleveled, you do not receive any credits. Is that what
No, they get credits, but they count differently in the GPA. So the level 1 course gets more credits in the GPA in there. So advanced students want leveled classes. And so they're likely to veer away from an unleveled course, even though the content could be awesome.
But you still receive credits if you're in.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
How do you determine whether it's leveled or unleveled? What,
I don't personally determine it. The department heads and the teachers who propose it do a curriculum draft. And some of them, for example, Holocaust and Human Behavior wasn't ours originally. We took really that curriculum from a national curriculum. And the national curriculum has helped decide. We have in our program of studies sort of an outline of what a level 1 course, or level 2, or level 3, and it's really, the content is the same. It's a level of independence and expectations of the students, what they'll do on their own, sort of less and less hand-holding and supports.
okay.
So it's AP, level 1, level 2, level 3 unleveled.
Not that I'm offended by this, but it's like, how come accounting 1 and accounting 2 aren't a level class?
Yeah, and truly, they used to be. And every time a NEASC visit comes in and they're saying, you don't have enough heterogeneously grouped classes, we're looking to find some balance there.
Fun-loving accountants get the hit. That's what.
No, truthfully, we don't have that strong a business program that you'd say, this is an accounting course for the Bentley student. We're talking about balancing the student who wants basic general accounting, balance debits and credits for this, and also to get a taste of what does a business program look like at a business college. It's offering one little smattering and trying to balance that, so that you don't shut students out either.
Right, but we do have two
Yeah.
levels of it. In the past, we
Accounting is
used to go-
unleveled now. It's unleveled now.
I mean, it's unleveled, but
Right.
I mean, but it's accounting 1, accounting 2.
Yes.
We used to have more offerings before, right? Didn't we go up to accounting 4?
No, not since I've been there.
Well,
No.
All right. I'm
Yeah.
dating myself, so that went way back.
Potentially, in fact, when I started a couple years back, there were 3.5 business teachers. Now there's 1. So that's what I mean by programming is,
Right.
very different.
Teresa, on the senior seminar, mentions that there may be guest teaching. Would it just be, would there be people from the community or just actual high school teachers?
Anybody that I think that gets screened in and screened out, I think appropriately. There may be people with skills that are doing, she has people come in from the hospitals, particularly quite often, in other classes. So this might be a place, for people to come in. I'd certainly like to come in and speak, a couple of issues. Certainly, I know assistant principal might want to come in. We might want to talk about digital citizenship and internet safety. And
Can I just ask, in the cover letter, dear students and parents, it says Abington High School's mission statement and academic, social, and civic expectations drive all academic and student life. Because you use social and civic expectations here, and the letter we see to Mr. Edwards later on in the informational piece talks about social and civic expectations. What are those expectations?
behavioral, community service, and you're right, it is driven by NEAS standards, and those standards change, by the way, so that will look very different in 2019. We're operating on 2009. It's a 10-year, accreditation process. But the civic and social are measured by offering co-curricular activities, athletic activities, behavioral conduct. We have to track conduct and report conduct. community service opportunities. Do we have a community service class? We answer to, so we can write that in our report. Yes, we offer a community service class to engage students in those opportunities. Opportunities in, for example, integrating special ed classes with regular ed classes and students to, work cooperatively there. Those are the social and civic.
So when the social and civic expectations is blended throughout the entire program.
Yep.
It's not like when you say, well, what are your expectations? You're not gonna go to a bullet list.
We have a bullet list that we have to, provide in ESC, and the one here is really about tolerance, bullying, those kinds, so we expect, but how do you measure that? So we say
Right.
we expect students to be tolerant, we expect students to, not support bullying or participate in bullying behavior, we expect them to act appropriately, maturely, respectfully, and then how do you measure that? We report measuring it using our code of conduct.
Okay.
It's a stretch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the informational piece around NEASC specifically addresses findings and areas that were highlighted by NEASC.
Yes, and I think, maybe it was 3 years ago, we started to report out on every student's report card. You see the assistant principal, I don't know if there's a line about they meet or exceed or expectations. That was, they wanted to make sure we were reporting out, not just that we were tracking, but are we reporting out our students meeting civic and social expectations? And it's about tardiness to school and attendance to school and conduct. Very much driven by their rubric of expectations.
So is that what the code there that it shows up is driven by attendance?
Tardiness,
Okay.
conduct.
Okay.
Office conduct, not necessarily individual, but there's 7 different teachers, so only if it got to the level of office referral.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
all right. So then these 4, and the art, addition to visual arts, those ones we're not considering?
You don't need to. They were only, it says contingent upon additional staff, and the timing of this was, the program, the school council approved it prior to a budget meeting, and we'd only be able to do this with additional art teacher, and I know we've taken that off the table.
So every course offering we have here is, if a student elected to take, whatever it is in here, discrete mathematics, if it's offered here, you're going to be able...
Not necessarily.
Okay.
No.
So is there any reason to consider working these into the program of study? So if it does...
I don't think so, because I would think that your expectation of me and mine of a department head would be, the school committee has approved this, now go write the curriculum for it. And if we know absolutely, we have no intention of doing it, we would have to pay someone to write the curriculum over the summer, probably. I think that might be a catch-22. What you have in there, though, is approved curriculum already. So, but there are places where we may know that we're not going to be able to run every single one of those science classes, and there's lines in the program studies that say, well, if 4 students sign up for AP European History, we're probably not going to run it.
Okay, right.
It's not fair to the students, too, to have them see this and then
Yeah.
not be able to do it.
To know that we absolutely aren't going to fund it.
Right, so all these other classes that are here, there's curriculum built around it?
Right.
Okay.
Right,
So you would have to develop curriculum for this, so why do
Right.
that if,
right.
okay. Just a couple other things. One thing I noticed in here, we've got grades of students, and this goes back to our seminar that we had,
Mike Shackelford.
Mike, yeah, is we still have in there, feeling grade is 0 to 59. Is there any discussion about addressing that?
Lots.
In the unfairness of it? I mean, he made a great point in that, which was, was a fabulous day. But to, really, if someone gets a 25, it's hard to recover from that.
We're having a Mike Shackelford sequel. Do you want to talk about?
There's been lots of discussion around grading for years, and coming to some other kinds of conclusions around grading. I think it involves so much more than just changing that. But other school districts have gone to, nobody gets below 50 term 1, so they haven't dug a hole in.
Right.
Or nobody gets below the 50, or, we need work on our grading policies in general. We've had a lot of independence and autonomy, and I think maybe high school's probably worse than anybody, but, there's a lot of autonomy, and that I think people protected their autonomy and said, this is what works for my class and my department and my, but I think that Mike Shakovitz's bringing a lot of discussion for us around grading.
So the plan would be to continue to do professional development, do more professional development on this, and then go into making those changes.
Right.
Do we have like a time frame on how something like this might be addressed?
Well, he's coming the 24th and 25th of this month.
Okay.
So, we're going to continue to do trainings there. And then it's a matter of having a committee come together and really look at this. And it's not a one meeting
Right.
discussion. This could take a year, shorter maybe, or longer, just regarding the specifics, because it's really, number one, it starts off as a philosophical belief, and then it's what does the district believe in, and then in terms of then creating procedures around that. And because we're doing the training and it's in February, and then, everything will be up and running come September, do we have a window of opportunity between, March and June to really have a committee do all the work that's needed to make those procedural changes for the September open, or is it something that we need to look at for the future? So we're working at it, and it opens up, it poked the bear is the best way to say it, is that Mike Shackelford came, really had great conversations. He was only there for one day. He poked the bear in terms of really kind of threw out there different scenarios for everyone to think about, and then left.
Right.
And so, everybody was talking back in their buildings, but we've already earmarked certain professional development, so we were fortunate enough to have them come back. And so the conversation will continue, and then take place at the different levels.
Yeah, because that was an outstanding professional development day. I mean, and everybody was engaged. I mean, it wasn't just, he was great, but everybody bought into it and was engaged, and it was outstanding.
So we need to push that critical mass of teachers and administrators and directors, department heads, to get to the point where we're crafting language that changes that and they believe in it, rather than changing it and saying, this is what you're going to do. We need to bring them on board with professional development and then change it.
Right.
Yeah, and we wouldn't want that to start just at the high school. We'd want that to be a sort of district philosophy, beginning at younger grades.
And elementary will be engaged this time around. It was a secondary
Right,
movement
yeah.
for the meeting that you were at the training, but elementary will be involved in the coming trainings
Okay.
as well. So.
And one other thing related to that, the class rank is weighted, but the GPA isn't weighted. Is there some reason why that, and does that put students at a disadvantage when they're applying to school with an unweighted GPA?
I don't think they're at a disadvantage. I know that our director of guidance attends the Lighthouse meetings around the surrounding areas, and we try to make sure that we're pretty much equal to everybody else. And that's our same issue with NEASC around accreditation, that you want to make sure you're at the competitive levels as everyone else. So I don't have the actual who does and who doesn't, and where would we be at a disadvantage? I'm not sure.
But you don't feel we're at a disadvantage?
I don't feel that we are, and I would say that we're one of many schools have gone away from class rank, particularly, and not having rankings at graduation and,
Right.
and honor speakers, because there's a lot of pressure. That has been one of the that maybe we don't need to rank students necessarily. We haven't gone that
Right.
place, but there is a lot of
Rank,
discussion.
and then
there.
there's the GPA, though.
Right.
But,
So
I'm just,
right.
we have a weighted GPA, weighted rank.
Right.
But we have an unweighted GPA. So if you're Peter Schaefer and you're taking AP Calculus and you're Paul Haggard, you're struggling, and, he's taking, general math, and I get an 85, it's the same as value as Peter's 85 in AP Calculus.
True.
So, I guess I'm just trying to understand it going full, like if you're applying to a college, I technically could have the same GPA as Peter, even
True.
though.
But your report card, your transcript would say which level class that you took.
So your
Right.
admissions
So-
officers can
right.
look and say you took, general versus AP
AP.
or honors,
So your
So they
GPA is
know.
one spot.
the ranking.
Right.
Right, but do we know, I mean, how does that translate when you're going to schools that, if, Peter and I are going into the same school, we have the same, I just, could we?
Clear on there.
Yep, because they have to look at more than just your GPA. And I think that we've been, I think pretty cognizant of trying to maintain that level 1, level 2, level 3 still have the same content expectations. And I think that the more and more we move to universal, common core state standards, all students are supposed to be expected to be able to accomplish the same minimal sorts of standards. So we've continued to say the course is the same, the pace is different, the independence is different. That's how we determine the leveling piece. So our profile, with every transcript, you have to send a profile, your school profile, and on that profile explains whether GPA is weighted or not, rank is weighted or not, what the leveling means, and that's how most schools do it. That's the way I understand it.
Okay. And just bear with me, I got one last thing. On physical education, every student's required to take physical semester of physical education. Is there a way we could, if you play a sport, that you could get credit for being on that team, and then you would, rather than have, so if you're playing on the girls soccer team, not freshman year, sophomore, junior, and senior, you play in the girls soccer team, you don't, and you play the whole season, and you let your guidance counselor know beforehand that you basically are out of phys ed because you're going to get credit for it, but for participating. Is that something we could consider?
You'd have to get a waiver from the state. Other schools have done with a waiver. We've talked about it. The way that seasons work and our semesters, it becomes difficult. The student that says, I'm going to play tennis, so I don't want to take phys ed in the spring, but then they don't, and it's too late to take phys ed, and they have missed the state requirement of physical education every year. And I think it puts us in a difficult situation to answer to the state. There may be other ways to navigate some sort of commitment, but then you end up punishing the student. How do you make that up? I don't know if you can. Could you do it just in the fall so they could take it in the spring and still satisfy the state requirement? But then you've said, well, students who play fall sports, they don't have to have phys ed, but those who play spring sports do.
So then you don't want to do it. I mean, that's what I'm hearing.
I think it's
You don't
too
wanna do it.
complicated to do it.
Can't we
Yeah.
just consider it? I'd like to just.
We have considered
What I
it.
heard is with a waiver you could, and
Yeah.
then there are a couple of hoops we'd have to jump through first.
Right, you've
that
got to get the waiver from the
equity-
state first.
Because the state requires PE in your
Mm-hmm.
program.
State
Right, right,
state
but I-
requires PE for every student every year. They don't say how much PE. Could you change the schedule so students take PE, 2 days a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Monday, Wednesday, Friday? The only legal line is every student must participate in physical education every year.
Right.
Right,
Doesn't
there's
say how
no-
much.
It doesn't say
Right.
how much,
Right.
right. And that's why when you look at the program of studies and you look at when those students are participating in a sport, everything you're asking, they're getting that and then some. So why are we adding that on as a requirement? And also, could it free up the phys ed classes for those students who aren't participating in a sport? They might get more out of it, or even if it's another way of reallocating resources. I'm not looking to cut phys ed, but maybe we can use those resources someplace else in the district. If we've got so many students participating in a sport that we don't need to have all these phys ed classes, and we can reallocate the resources to give more at the 7th or 8th grade level or 6th grade level.
I don't go into program studies looking to cut programming, so I think that would have to be something might happen in a budget scenario situation, that we're looking to cut programming, and then that might be something we'd look at. You would have to get a state waiver, though. You can't just say that athletes, do not have to participate in physical education without a waiver. So I think after the waiver, and to get that waiver, you'd have to write, what are you going to do to ensure? What are you going to do to ensure that all of those students do in fact participate? So we do struggle with the season piece. I could look at, I think Hingham might be one that does do that. Weymouth got a hand slap, I'm pretty sure, about some of the things that they were trying to get around it.
Because how many, like in the fall, how many students do we have participating in a fall sport? I mean, between cross-country, football, the two soccers, golf.
We have a lot,
Right,
yeah. We have a lot in spring, too.
right.
Track's a big draw, and do you count Frisbee, and you know.
But what is your end goal? So your end goal is to look at how we can reallocate, so that if we don't have as many students needing PE, then perhaps we're either reallocating the PE time to focus additional time at the elementary or middle school level or wherever, or we're possibly saying, you know, we don't maybe need all the PE staff that we have.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm not looking to, I think if we can make it a better experience for the kids that are taking PE. Because if you've got, you know, kids, I mean, you know, that are playing a sport, let's just take, we're in basketball season now, and you've got kids that are on the varsity or JV basketball team. Basketball's part of phys ed these next 2 weeks. Those kids are already doing it. They're gonna dominate when they play in there. Maybe there's other kids who aren't gonna make that team, but still enjoy basketball. They'll get more out of that physical education class, for one thing. That's one thing for the students. But also, if there is an opportunity to take those resources at, you know, if we don't have as many PE classes at the high school level, and use it with the middle school or the elementary, but looking at how we can reallocate
But
it.
when do we need, so say I was one of those students, and I didn't need PE, what were you gonna put me in? If I'm not going to PE because I'm taking a sport, wouldn't you have to offer me something else?
Well, they're gonna get credit for it. You're gonna get
Yeah,
credit.
because I'm still
No,
gonna be
I don't think,
there.
I think that's very different. I think that
No,
they
you can
wouldn't.
get credit for it.
I,
Other
well,
towns are doing
I
it.
wouldn't give them credit for it until we talked about a curriculum. I mean, we're giving credit for curriculum-based courses. So I think we would have to really work around, you know, what do we, our PE
Other towns are
curriculum.
doing it. I'm just
But-
telling you, other towns
No,
are
and
doing
other
it.
towns are
They're getting credit
waiving
for
the
it.
requirement. I'm not sure
Well,
they're getting credit.
for it. It's in their program of studies.
Maybe they are, but I think we would have to come to the place of what's a curriculum and what are we going to give, because then we've really got to dance around what other activities can students do in a co-curricular, you know, environment and get curriculum credit for it. Because, you know, you and I are giving diplomas, you know, we're signing off on a curriculum that we've approved. So I think this can't happen that quickly. I want to make sure, because there's certainly a phys ed class is doing a lot more than playing basketball. So, I mean, I hope, and hopefully they're doing all, you know, the table tennis, the ping pong, the buka ball, the things that they've never learned in other, you know, in a sport that they are a master of. And if we come back to the table and decide, you know, this is different, this is not something we want to do anymore, you know, this is, we want to change up our curriculum requirements or our mission, or, I just think it takes more than just giving them credit for it. I wouldn't feel comfortable just giving them credit for it without some requirements and some understanding of, is it curriculum we're giving credit for?
Well, then I'm asking the superintendent to look into that to see what we can do. Because I mean, with all due respect to the physical education teachers in Abington, it's like, you know, what students get out of participating on an interscholastic team is so much more, and I think they'll even admit, the commitment, being part of a team. I mean, those playing on a high school team, those memories last with you a lifetime. I don't remember with all due respect, my physical education classes, you know.
I remember both,
Floor
but-
hockey, and a kid gets hit where he shouldn't get hit, you know, and everybody laughs about it. It's like, those are the memories, but being part of a team and the commitment and the obligation to be there and the time, I mean, it's like, there's more out of that. So why not give kids credit for that? And then
I
if
guess,
it frees up them to take an elective, they can take an elective, or you give them, you know, a study.
Yeah, I certainly was one of those three-sport athletes that didn't know why I was in gym all the time either, but I think the times have changed, and our phys ed teachers are also responsible for district-determined measures. They're assessing students. It's a very different world than it was when I, you know, was in phys ed classes also. And I don't think it's something that we can just give. I wouldn't feel comfortable giving credit. A waiver, perhaps. I don't know about giving credit, but we would have to, you know, really think about that. And it's not something anybody's asked me to say, you know, let's reallocate resources or think about what are we going to provide students who aren't in phys ed class.
I think that's like a big concern for us, is we have a lack of choice for our electives and different opportunities.
We still have learning centers, and I think, you know, there aren't a lot of high schools that still have learning centers, you know, but we can't fill student schedules.
Study halls.
Is it right?
Yeah, so.
We
So-
call them learning centers to also count the time and learning for NEASC too.
I just,
But you're,
Had to call
the
it that.
program you're looking for this maybe in the future, because the program of studies, they've already had all that work done, they've already gone to school council, they've already, but you're just asking a question from the program of studies, but maybe for the future, for next year.
Why,
maybe the
why can't
council
they,
relook
why
at
can't
it.
why can't they consider it now? Go back to school councils. I mean, I
Is
don't,
that honest or not?
Well, yeah, no, it's not, I'm not asking for consideration of that. I think you're talking about curriculum work and scheduling and waivers to the state, and I'm gonna walk through I'm gonna continue on our process of scheduling students. We're scheduling students, before February vacation, or at least sending out the information February vacation, so it's not something that can happen.
right, when I just worry about the future, and, the future is, 3-4 years. It's like, why do things have to take so
All I'm
long?
saying is that,
I'm still waiting for an updated student handbook, too. That was April 29th of last year. I haven't seen anything come back, standardize that, nothing's happened.
Well, we've talked about that going through.
That's what my concern is, we say the future, and then the future doesn't
Well,
happen.
But, no, you also said an updated student handbook, and we talked about doing that through MASC and the policy review process just last month.
No, we didn't.
A student handbook is,
Didn't do that.
goes through the school council every
Jim
spring.
Hardy said that that would be part of the policy process.
What I was trying to say, we standardize, because Terry was standing, it was April 29th, 2014, standing, I know that because it was my mother's birthday, hey, Mom. And I said, if we standardize certain sections, because you could make a change in a section, and then the Frollo can come back, the Woodsdale can come back, and why don't we standardize certain sections? And I haven't seen anything. That's why I worry about when people say, oh, in the future.
And we said that would be a good thing to do. And you were gonna.
Right, you
come
even
in-
said it would buy you
Great.
back time.
You were gonna come in over the summer, you had time to take a look at it with us. Then we got into the start of the school year, then we talked about MASC coming in and looking at all of our policies together in one fell swoop. That was my memory.
No, it had nothing to do with
MASC
MASC.
did-
Student handbook has nothing to do with MASC and within that project. I'm sorry, that's wrong.
Actually, when MASC is picking up our materials, isn't he picking up copies of all of the handbooks? Because he mentioned
Yeah, but he's
something
not gonna
about coordinating
standardize it
them.
for us. That's what I was asking for.
No, he said that they would look for
All
inconsistencies.
right, I got us
so that they
off.
could be corrected.
I got us off, but I just worry about when someone says the future, because like, when is the future?
well, I'm guilty of saying the future, so let me explain my logic. Tonight, Terry's here for the revision approval of this proposal.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm not
Hold
trying
on,
to
hold
derail
on.
that.
And so, I just want to say is that art's on here, and health and wellness, and science, and social studies. So my future comment was not meant to upset you, it was meant to say, for the next go-around, for the future program of studies, process, which follows a process, it goes on every
Right.
month, it goes through school council, it goes through the curriculum council, it goes through a lot of different steps. We'll make sure that we revisit that.
That's all I'm asking for, thank you.
Okay, so I will
Right.
make sure that my
Right.
word of future will be clarified in the future.
Thank you.
Shouldn't say that. All right.
So,
thanks.
Is there,
through the school council revision process, through the waiver process, through the curriculum process, it'll be deliberated.
correct. I'll bring it up, put it on the agenda. I can't promise that's where people want to go with it. So if there are any other questions on the proposal, could I have a vote, or?
So we'd be, any further discussion? Be looking for a motion to approve the revisions to the Abington High School's Program of Studies for the 2015-2016 year as presented here this evening.
Make that motion.
I'll second it.
Well, is it presented and amended? Because this has been amended, right?
Because the art was scratched.
Yeah,
Scratching the art classes.
Yeah.
so presented and amended?
And amended.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Next, we have the report of Superintendent of Schools.
So, under personnel administration, what's happened is, it may not be on this It's not on the January 27th agenda, but on February 3rd on the published agenda, we did is we moved that entire section under informational. So I won't, and I talked to people, won't necessarily go through that, but if people have questions on that, I want to answer any questions you might have. We included the grid that shows the plus minus and then each of the appointments, retirements, and other.
We're going to continue to
Yep.
get this information, we just
Yep,
won't.
provide it.
Yep.
I just one quick question. Who's the head boys track coach? That's the one that's not listed here, or at least on the copy I have. I assume it's Lanner.
Ryan Lanner?
I want to double check that and confirm that. I don't have it here in front of you. It has been in the past. Do you remember, Teresa? Not to put you on the spot.
He was appointed earlier in the year, but I'm pretty sure it's Brian Mann.
If that's not it, I can,
I can send you an email. Let you
Okay.
know. I'm pretty sure it's
Any other questions?
Do we not have a list of a boys lacrosse coach?
that just occurred last week.
Brian. Just came in after the agenda was posted.
So we do have someone.
We
Yep.
do. His name is
It's
Thomas Flanagan.
Flanagan.
From Hingham. Just did the letter Friday for the
Okay.
agenda.
So that'll be on the next agenda.
Do we just have the boys, or do we also have a girls lacrosse?
We do not have the girls because of participation.
We did have a girls a couple of years
Yeah,
ago. I'm pretty sure
okay.
Meg Doherty was the coach.
Right.
Casey.
Kay Casey.
Kay Casey.
Yeah, I think Kate's done it the last 2 years.
Yep.
Yeah,
There
there
she
was
is.
Meg
Sorry.
Doherty at one
Yes,
point.
yes,
Okay.
she did last year as well.
I thought we had trouble getting that team together. That was, okay.
Yeah, because weren't we originally going to try to co-op with Rockland last year for the lacrosse or something? And then we got enough students to sign up in the end.
I think that's what happened, that's when Kate came on board.
For the
too.
girls.
Yeah, for the girls, yeah.
Okay, so there's the motion.
Any other questions on that?
No.
Continue with the other matters?
Yes.
In your packet, we have a letter from the town manager to the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, and department heads. Wanted to make sure that the school committee had a copy of it. Basically, this is, according to the charter, the town manager is required to have a preliminary budget proposal. And there's a couple of very important things to mention about this letter in your packet. He's required to do this by charter, so he's done it, but this is very early in the budget process, so this is preliminary. And even in your letter, you can see that he's bolded. I think he's actually used a larger font and underlined that this is preliminary. Because in terms of a revenue summary, what it provides for the entire town is a 1.67% increase, or a $717,962 increase to the entire town budget, because this anticipates a flat projection on state aid, which we don't know what that aid is as of today. It also projects the revenue using early numbers in the process, and so there's not a good picture on what the local revenue and growth and receipts will be at this point. Over the next couple of months, they hope to get a better picture of local receipts and the funding from the state. But right now, with the new governor and his budget proposal not due until the end of the first week in March, we don't even have preliminary numbers on the state funding yet. So the message really is that this is preliminary, and if this came to pass, this would be a terrible budget, but that it is preliminary. It provides a 1% increase to the school department. It is a working document. That 1% increase would provide about an additional, above this year's budget, $203,000, which would put us into a very bad situation and position with our budget. But again, this is preliminary, so I'm not going to read it to you, it's in the packet, and, but I certainly answer any questions people might have. Other than noting, I want to mention how much we appreciate being able to work with the town so closely, answer questions back and forth, and talk to each other about budgets. We've had several of those meetings with the town leadership. And,
What do we need for a level of service budget? I
Felicia?
can't remember, right? We threw a figure out there at one point. Probably percentage, or rough.
The rough,
I don't want you to guess.
a rough percentage.
Higher than 1, though, right?
Yeah, it's higher than one.
one.
Higher than one.
Sorry.
It would, you know, without pinning me down to it, it would be a little bit over 3%,
Yeah.
3.1, 3.2.
And I think even Rick, at the joint meeting we had with the selectmen, acknowledged that, you know, the way the numbers were looking at the time, it's like the school department would take, unfortunately, the biggest hit.
As the biggest department, that's unfortunately what happens. So what we hope is that between now and the town meeting, you know, we hope that our number that we've provided early on and this number meet somewhere in the middle at level service or better. That's the goal. Other questions that people may have? Okay. Do you want to do dates to remember?
Sure. So we have dates to remember. We're already past Friday, January 30th, which was last week, early release. Friday, February 6th, in-service early release day. Tuesday, February 10th, is the school building committee at the police station at 6 p.m. Tuesday, February 10th, Abington Music Parents Meeting at Abington High School at 7 p.m. Monday, February 16th through Friday is winter vacation. Monday, February 16th is President's Day. All school offices and buildings are closed. Tuesday, February 24th is our next regularly scheduled school committee meeting. Saturday, February 28th is the meeting, joint meeting with Selectmen Finance Committee at the administrative offices at the North School at 8 a.m.
Sorry.
Did I skip something?
No, I believe that's going to be at the town hall.
Okay.
In previous years, it has been our meeting, but the finance committee is looking to host that this year here at the town hall. Sorry.
That's okay.
It's a-
So same
was
date,
changed.
same time.
That's
28th.
likely the time, that's definitely the date. I've
Okay.
emailed the chair of the finance committee to confirm it, and I'll certainly do that. I'll certainly confirm the time well in advance of the meeting.
And Tuesday, March 3rd, is the school committee coffee hour at the town library at a time to be determined, which we need to decide tonight if,
We probably should, because we're not gonna meet in,
Right.
next time we meet, it's a week before.
right,
Oh, yeah.
and we need
As
to,
long as you're out of there by 8:15, you can have it anytime.
And it's open, there's nothing else going on.
Nothing else going on, I already reserved the room. I reserved the room more or less from 6 o'clock to
Right.
8:15.
so the thought was maybe 6:30 to 8, something like that. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there, I don't know. Because that gives us time
I think
to,
that's fine.
Yeah, no.
I'll confirm that with Deborah, make sure.
I make apple pie. You can make one. It's pretty good.
so maybe we can,
That doesn't
can work
draw
on a
people in,
list
I
as
don't
far
know.
as what we need, and I'll get with you on, if we have a coffee urn or whatever.
I might make apple pie.
And we'll need forks for the apple
Make your own
pie.
pie,
You'll see.
So we really have any coffee at 6:30 at night?
Well, I'll make decaf,
Decaf,
and
definitely
we'll bring some
decaf.
herbal tea.
Okay.
And then maybe we can work on how to get the constant contact out. I don't know, we'll try it and see how it goes.
Can I just ask on that meeting with the Selectmen Finance Committee, if that's here, is that a recorded meeting? Like it's gonna be,
They're intending on putting on cable.
Okay. And we're not the school department, it's gonna be other, is that like a,
My understanding is that it's going to be, we're going to go in the morning, and then other departments will follow probably in the late morning or afternoon.
Oh,
They're going
okay.
to schedule departments to come in, and they want to try to do my understanding is they want to do the entire town in one day.
okay.
So the benefit is you can get a thorough read without picking up and starting and stopping and starting and stop, where were we? And then you catch all of the questions at once in one comprehensive way.
Okay.
And you're not bringing apple pie to that meeting?
Yeah, if it helps get a budget number, I would.
Could you bring an apple pie to that meeting?
It's not that good.
All right, so, any other dates, that's good. And we've done our North River. So next we have the report of the Assistant Superintendent for Pupil Personnel Services, Dr. Thomas.
Thank you. So in between all the snowstorms, we were still able to have our in-service days, so last Friday and this coming Friday. So we've had a variety of department meetings across elementary and secondary staff, as well as paraprofessionals and tutors and nurses, and just a variety focusing on curriculum planning, science and math, horizontal lesson development and collaboration, math MCAS action plans, Excel training. We've had MCAS accommodation prep, vertical alignment of curriculum lessons, and also we have specialized areas of OT, PT, speech language, focusing on curriculum and services for delivery. At the secondary level, a lot of curriculum work, really linking it to the Common Core and the Common Rubric analysis and curriculum revisions, and then looking at open response and data analysis and integrated assessments and data analysis. So we also have some disciplines that are looking at piloting textbooks. So they are working through that, as well as updating and reevaluating the science curriculum. So we have a lot going on, never enough time. However, fortunately, we are able to get it in between our snowstorms. Any questions on professional development?
That's
I know
all.
you're new, Leslie, so I know that if you have any questions, and you're always welcome to call,
Okay.
and we can meet on anything.
And all this this is all done during those in-service days?
Correct. Yep. So we have the in-service days, 7 half days, and then we have 1 full day. And I'll be bringing next meeting in end of February, 28th, 24th, the professional development draft calendar for your approval for next year.
How do we handle, like, as far as the evaluation of, say, these services, like, you know, that was a good session, that one needed some work, whatever. How do you get that feedback?
And you've asked us before, we do it by surveys, SurveyMonkey.
Yeah.
We also do, we have small departments,
Right.
so you get it initially. I mean, right there, they're
Right.
telling you if it's working
Ex-
or
right.
not. But, when we pull the whole secondary together, or we pull the whole elementary together, you have that through surveys.
Do you want to tell people what SurveyMonkey is?
Sure, it's
Because
online.
we know, but people may
Yeah,
not know.
it's a survey that's created online with questions, quick
Mm.
feedback, and then it gives you data immediately. Also, if we have consultants come in, then they send us surveys for them to, like Mike Shackelford was a good example, where we contracted with, they sent the surveys, we provided information, and they correlated that analysis for us.
Okay.
So we do, and then some though is, again, a lot is state initiative driven. So they may hate it, but we don't have a choice. So people are very well aware that, where we have autonomy, we always want that feedback. Where we don't have autonomy, people understand that, okay, evaluation is here and you don't have any control over it, but, let's get through it the best we can. So retail, same thing. Staff members hated the training. However, everybody has to go through it, let's do it the best we can. So, you're not gonna make everybody happy, but where we do have autonomy, I think we try our best to provide.
But if we dislike it that much, do we, and it's mandated by the state, do we let them know?
Oh, yeah, loud and clear.
And that was one of the frustrations. You asked a good question earlier about the Mike Shackelford and getting the grades changed in terms of how our philosophy is around grading and how quickly can we move on that. The thing that that slows us down is all of those things that we're required to do. Because in my mind, assessment and technology, the effective use of technology in classrooms, are the two things that I would want us to be doing and focusing our time on. As we're going into a new building, we want people using the technology and effectively in their classrooms, and the assessment piece is something that we all have identified as an area of need, but those state initiatives slow us down.
Tremendously.
I know you didn't ask, it's sort of a tangent, but I just wanted to mention it.
No, that's the world you live in.
Right, right. And Paul also brought up a good point. If any of you, want to attend the Mike Shackelford training, I know you work, but, if there are days that people are available when we do have an in-service, it's really great to pop in, because I think that it's nice to hear school committee people say, it was worth my time to take a day off from work. Right. It was something beneficial. This is what I got out of it. And Paul has repeatedly said it at different meetings. So, and I know all of you have been on school councils, and I know that all of you go to games, and I know that all of you do a lot for, an unpaid position. However, again, you have to speak and answer to the community. So I can talk about how great the PD went, but, if you're there to be able to speak to it, I think it even has more meaning for our community members. So I appreciate that as well.
Because honestly, I took away, it helped me in what I do. I mean, that golden circle that he, start with the why. I mean, that stuck with me. I mean, I've actually mentioned to people at work, so that was very helpful for me. So it was great, outstanding.
Good, thank you. All right, and then the next piece is our home education, homeschool programs. So I would be requesting a motion to approve the additional home education program for the 2014-15 school year. We have a student who's in 11th grade who is requesting to be homeschooled. So they have already provided all the documentation. So I just need school committee approval, and then we're able to move forward on that. We are now up to 20 students that are homeschooled, and this will make it 21.
Just in high school?
No, across the whole district. And they move, in and out. So sometimes they opt to do it, and then sometimes they come back to Abington Public Schools, and then it might be another year that they opt out and they want to do homeschool. So we track them closely. So if I could have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Thank you.
Next, we have the report of the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Finance. Ms. Michelle?
My first order is a school building committee update. Today, as Mary Mahoney put it, through storm and traffic and everything else, our design development documents were submitted to the Mass School Building Authority today, which is the first phase post-feasibility. So we've now moved into design documents and anticipating going out to bid for the new building in the early fall. Leading up to the submission of the design documents today, I just want to take a second just to kind of give you an overview of the types of activities that have gone on over the last few months and actually over the last year. We've had almost weekly building committee, subcommittee, working group meetings on Friday mornings with a group of about a dozen people that include members of the school building committee, the professional staff, and school employees. And through those meetings, working through design questions that the designers had, working with the civil engineers, looking at traffic flow and looking at the facility itself, and then make recommendations to the full building committee. So those meetings have happened 2 or 3 times a month. Then we've had monthly building committee meetings where the working group conversations are then transitioned into for the whole building committee and have greater discussions for the whole building committee. And then we've also had, over the last few months, numerous days of meetings with school staff regarding the actual intricacies of the building. what the classrooms look like, what the hallways look like, what the office spaces look like, what furniture, what fixtures, what people are looking for and what they would like to see in the building. So we brought staff in, talked to the professional team, then we had a second round of meetings when they brought back all of the information that they got in the initial meetings to show and make more adaptations around the recommendations made by school staff. The professional team not only includes architects and designers, but they also bring in numerous consultants around furniture, we had a consultant in the other day talking about athletic space, gym space, weight room space, and equipment within those, although we're not selecting equipment right now, talking about how the space can be designed and built so that the equipment can then fit in there. As a matter of fact, probably not for a year, the furniture consultant brings in all types of furniture and makes up mock-up of a classroom with various furniture, and people go in and try it and test it, maybe teach in that room, talk to the students about the furniture itself, the comfort or lack of comfort, or whether there's book holders in the bottom of the chairs, or the size of the chairs. So I just wanted to provide you a kind of overview of the types of things that have been happening in this first phase of design. And it's been a lot of time, a lot of people have been working very diligently. I don't know, Kathy, did you want to add? Kathy's been attending the working group meetings. Did you want to add anything?
No, it's been great to have the opportunity to actually take a look and at fine-tuning things to make sure it works right. Moving things a few feet this way, a few feet that way, and really looking at the usability of all of the spaces around the building.
So when people drive by everybody obviously knows in Abington that we voted and approved very proudly to build a school, but when you drive by the high school over the last couple of months, nothing's changed. It doesn't mean that work isn't going on behind the scenes.
But when I drive by it now, I picture it differently.
Yeah.
In my mind, it looks different.
We're still on track to go out to this summer, be doing sub-bids, or pre-qualifying sub-bidders, going out to full bid in the fall, and hopefully having a company on board in November, December to break ground in January.
And we're getting all the snow out of the way this year, so
Correct.
break ground.
We won't have any
It's
snow.
going to be no
next year.
snow winter next year. That has been a question. Part of the bid will be winter conditions, so there'll be an expectation that as long as it's possible that they will be able to break ground.
But you remind me, Felicia, even the flow of the construction equipment goes into this phase of the planning, so that we know what areas will be locked off, how will the construction equipment
Fencing
flow
will go.
around the site. Yeah.
Anyone have any questions? My last item is an exciting one. We had Mike Devney of Midway Auto has donated a 2013 van for our use once it's looking for an acceptance by a school committee. We currently have one Greenway van that's used not only for athletics in the afternoon, but also during the school day for special programs to do smaller field trips in and around town. And then it's used in the afternoons by the athletic department. Smaller teams may use the van to travel to away games. This will provide us a second van. We'll be keeping the first van and adding the second van, which will also be used during the school day for special programs and after school for athletic use. I should also note that anyone who drives the van is subject to we do a driving records request from the state, and those driving records are reviewed, and then they're also added to the town insurance.
So do you have to do that on an annual basis, on the driving record?
We do. It's actually not a requirement by the state, but we do it.
We noticed that the core reports don't tell you how many times people have sped or, other types of violations, so.
What will be the cost for this to the district as far as registration, insurance, and that?
It's done through the town's insurance. It's
Okay.
adding a vehicle to the fleet of 60 vehicles. It's not, I don't think it's that consequence.
Okay.
But actually, it's a savings when they can take a van over
Absolutely.
one of the buses.
Absolutely. When for example, golf team may use it, the tennis team may use it, in lieu of having to take the big yellow school bus.
Actually, the time that we took the small group of middle school kids into the State House for a month of the young adolescent, we were able to take it, which is a huge savings when you're taking 4 kids.
Sure.
Mhm. Rather than a 70-passenger yellow bus.
So this will be referred to as Van 2 or?
Van 2.
Van 2.
And this donation is in compliance with our policy?
Yes. We do not.
Yeah, it is, actually.
That's right, it is.
We do not, and this is where I need to mention that we do not have a policy, donation policy.
I already warned Peter that I was gonna say that, so.
So I'll be looking for.
But we will have one. We will have one.
Can we get a vanity plate that says policy or something for it?
Yeah. No, this is great.
I'll make the motion.
No second?
All in favor?
Yep. Do the school committee send something to?
I was just gonna say, so as far as, a big thank you to them that.
Yeah, because I think that would be in the policy if we had one.
From
Tell
the
you what to do.
From the school committee. From the school
Right.
committee. Yep.
Thank you.
Just so that you know, it's sort of a pet peeve of mine to write thank you notes to people. So that's been done in the past, but we'll certainly do this one from the school committee.
Thank you. And then new business and establishing of the next school committee meeting, February 24th at 7 PM here in the Carter Room. And then the meeting after that is March 24th, Carter Room at 7 PM as well.
Can I just ask one thing? It's not on the agenda. Dr. Thomas, the CPAC, what's the status of that? Just a quick update. I'm not sure where we stand on that.
I'm still waiting to hear back from the 2 individuals that were interested in it. I haven't heard back. I talked to
Okay.
them in December.
Right.
And then my last understanding was that one was interested in the school committee, and then I haven't heard
Okay.
a thing.
And we still would need a third person
Yeah, but
as
at
a
that
secretary.
time, the person said that he had a third person,
Okay.
and that they would be getting back to me. So
Okay.
we're still in the same place.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And we already did our information.
Clarify, I just want to clarify on school choice piece that I think.
Sure.
Paul you had brought something up about the sending district, and I know it was at the tail end of something, so I just wanted to clarify it. If you have a severe special needs student who happens to go to, say, to come to Abington, is in
Yep.
a school choice situation, the sending district, so where they actually live,
Right.
would pay for that outplacement.
For an out-of-district placement.
I
Right.
know that that's not something that was in this conversation, but when you said that word, it triggered me, and I just didn't want you to leave thinking that, all students would become, because those students with the severe special ed, which would warrant an out-of-district placement, would be charged back to the home school district.
Right. right.
Okay. And then
Thank
the
you.
other piece is just on the, and I just for clarification purposes, because I know we kind of all talked about it, but the student handbook piece, and I just want to clarify is, my understanding was that you wanted the policies consistently from elementary up, right, in the handbooks?
Well,
The student
well, whatever's
handbook?
the same in
Right,
each of the
and you wanted
handbooks.
it consistent.
Well, right, that it each school didn't have to handle it, it was basically say, a central office addressed that, yeah. And then the rest of it was just specific to the school.
Correct,
Yes.
okay, then
Yeah,
that
that's all.
understanding, so it is in line with what people were mentioning, okay. Because I know that it was a matter of making sure all the policies are all in line, then making sure that we have all of it in the handbook, and then making sure that all the specific schools. Okay,
Right, but that's not part of what Mr. Hardy and the MASC are gonna do. That still falls on us. I mean, they're not redoing our student handbook for us. They're only handling policies for us. Because not everything in that student handbook that needs to be aligned for the central office is a policy.
right, but in order for the policies to be all aligned, is that what?
I'm just saying, if we lined them all up and we had 10 sections that were the same in each one, then all those now are handled at the central office, and,
Then they would go across the board.
right.
Yeah.
But there may not be a policy that the school committee, it may be something that the district.
Procedurally.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
Okay,
And, yeah, my understanding is that there'd be, those things that are consistent would all be in one place.
Right,
And then
right.
different in other places that are more age-specific.
right. And I just wanted to clarify, just to make sure that when people come to present, that they're presenting what was being requested.
Well, yeah, because we're getting into that time of year when the
Right.
student handbooks are
Mr.
coming.
Haggerty.
Yes, yeah, let the fun begin.
So, and I,
You know exactly where we're heading.
Oh, yeah.
and I might be wrong, but my understanding was that through the MASC process, we'd be able to find that consistency in our handbooks, pull that out, and then hang the rest of the stuff depending on what's age-specific.
I was
I
under
might be
the
wrong.
impression that Mr. Hardy said that they would check the school handbooks to make sure they were consistent.
That's what I thought, too.
So we're consistently inconsistent, so we need to clarify, just because I don't want our people coming here.
Dr. Thomas, I have a note right on here on page 3 of my agenda. Mr. Hardy, MASC, alignment of handbooks, question mark.
Perfect.
Remind myself to follow up on that.
Thank you.
Has he
Yeah.
picked up our material?
He's picked up all of our materials, and we tried to set dates with him, and he said, give him 6 weeks to digitize, to process the paperwork.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, can I just add one other thing? Is, I'm feeling kind of lonely on the website subcommittee, and, we haven't met, technically, the subcommittee never met, so I didn't know if, there's anybody new here that might want to join the website subcommittee.
How do you get broken in, Leslie?
me for a lot of different things already.
All right, well, it was a great opportunity, I mean,
Oh, it's fun.
yeah.
We'll sleep on that.
Yeah, I'll sleep on that. We'll
We're
put that
cut-
out into the future.
All right. Still all by myself.
I was there.
Yeah, I know you were, right, and it was an outstanding meeting, though, yes.
So unless we have anything else,
No,
be
thank you.
looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Favor? At 9 PM.